got you over. You like love sour, then you should come try my poison.
Okay, hey, here we are. It's a brand new trial on something brand new. Oh, come on, really? Okay, I still got some details to work out here. All right, so we're supposed to be doing the chapter one of the Canefield Killer. I've been, I have some playback issues going on right now. I was going to take these off. First trial of trying something a little bit new here. But in any case, so the Canefield Killer is my novel. I wrote it a long time ago and threw it into the Waddies on Wattpad a couple years ago in 2018. I was all ready to put it on Amazon, and then the Waddies came along. So I said, you know what, I'm just gonna throw it into the competition, and if it wins something, it'll be great to put on Amazon. Um, right after the Waddies. I mean, after all, a nice big sticker on there is awesome. But this book was written in Barbados and was about Barbados, and it's an old story that had just been sitting around. So to win the Watty Awards for this one, 2018 was a bit of a surprise. So it was well earned. But well, okay, fine, well earned. Surprise. Yeah. Anyway, I'm babbling here. Um, this is what happens when I go off script. So, in any case, we're going to be reading this first chapter from this one right now. It's currently on Wattpad in Wattpad Paid Stories. Um, and it's the Canefield Killer. Let's read from the story description here, shall we? A serial killer stalks Barbados, and Detective John Riley returns to the island to stop them before they can turn their attention to the people closest to him. Uh, for the full thing is a serial killer stalks the tropical island of Barbados, leaving victims naked in cane fields, and the island police force is ill-equipped to handle the case. Enter Seattle homicide detective and Barbados native Detective John Riley. John hasn't been back to Barbados in decades, and he has his own demons to face. But as he combats the heat, the media, and the very police force he's working to help, he desperately hopes that he can stop the violence before the killer turns their attention to the people closest to him. He said this was written back in 2006 or so. Um, yeah, it's about 150,000 words. Um, anyway, I was different, different person, different writer back then. Anyway, so to get into it, um, all right. So, Canefield Killer, Chapter One. On a better day, Riley would have seen the pickup before it jerked into his lane, traveling at half his speed. As it was, he didn't see the truck until it was inches from his right shoulder. Riley threw his weight to the left, taking the motorcycle across the painted line onto the gravel at the side of the freeway at just over 90 miles an hour. A spray of gravel shot up behind the bike as the rear wheel tried to find purchase, and they started to slide to the left, spinning the bike around. Instinct took over, and Riley released his hold on the bike, kicking himself away from it. He never saw the bike hit the ground. Riley's shoulder took most of the impact, and then he rolled. The world was a blur of gray and blue as he spun, his face inches from the road, then staring up at the sky. There was a sickening thud and scratching of gravel on the helmet as his helmet bounced off the ground. As soon as he stopped moving, Riley jumped to his feet, hoping he hadn't broken anything, ready to move if another car was bearing down on him. He was in the clear. The only car near him was a blue SUV pulling over on the shoulder. He could see the white pickup getting smaller down the freeway, and his own bike was a good 50 feet to his left. Riley ran to his Ducati and lifted it up, struggling in the gravel for purchase as he did. He looked the bike over. It had huge scratches down the side. The fairing was broken and hanging off the bike. The mirror and blinker light were broken and dangling loose. He turned the key and tried the engine. The bike protested, and then started with a roar. Hey, are you okay? I saw everything, man. That guy's drunk or something. The SUV driver was standing at Riley's side. The SUV driver was standing at Riley's side, one hand outstretched, but not quite touching Riley's shoulder. Riley nodded. Talking through the helmet wasn't worth a hoarse voice, and his ears were still ringing from the fall. As he pulled off his gloves and fished inside his pocket, he could feel the dull thud of a migraine headache starting in the back of his head. He pulled the badge on a stainless steel chain from his pocket and pulled it over the helmet. Keeping the bike propped up against his leg, Riley rummaged in the magnetic bag on the tank and came out with his gun, which went into his rear waistband. Call 911, Riley shouted to the man and spun his leg over the bike. With a quick check over his shoulder, Riley took the bike back onto the freeway and opened the throttle. The engine sounded rough, and he was probably doing more harm than good as he bullied the speedometer up to 120, but he had to catch the pickup. He rounded a corner in the freeway and cursed under his helmet, slowing the bike down as he drove through a fog of burning rubber. Sitting at the bottom of the freeway divider was the white pickup truck. Stalled in the slow lanes was a small white car facing the wrong direction now, and with no discernible front end. A man was waving wildly at Riley with a flare in his hand. Riley took the bike off the road again, and this time it rested down gently. He glanced at the pickup below him. The car first, he thought, pulling off the helmet. As Riley started to move, the sound of an engine retching reached him. The pickup driver was planning an escape. The white car was sitting in the far right lane of the freeway, facing oncoming traffic, but the man had laid up more flares, and now Riley could see the same blue SUV pulling up again. Everything was under control for now. Riley ran to the truck. Just as the engine finally turned over, Riley yanked the door open, dragging the driver out with his hand locked around the man's neck. The smell of cheap whiskey followed them out of the cab. Detective John Riley leaned dazed drunk up against the pickup and paused, waiting. When the man teetered forward, Riley drove a fist into his stomach and threw him to the ground. The man groaned and tried to roll over, but Riley fell on him, his knee landing between the man's shoulder blades. Riley tossed the handcuffed drunk into the bed of the pickup. Taking the keys with him, he trotted past the remains of his bike on his way to the white car. I just hope this asshole didn't kill anyone. Damn this thing, detective. This guy honestly thinks these crap pictures he put will sell my house. This thing has been on the market for 3 weeks now. 3 weeks. And he doesn't get it online until yesterday. And with these pictures? So get a different agent. I told you not to use David. He couldn't sell a house to himself. Riley collapsed in the cheap office chair across from his sergeant. He was still wearing his boots and leather jacket, but his helmet and the many pieces of his Ducati had been piled onto a tow truck and driven into Seattle separately. Sergeant Glenn Harmon glanced past the monitor, looking directly at him for the first time since he had entered the room. Riley was almost 6'5", his skin a deep chocolate color, and his head kept cleanly shaved. Usually, Riley filled the doorway and was an imposing presence. Today, however, he was slouched in the visitor's chair, his legs stretched out in front of him. His jeans were shredded, and his eyes bloodshot. What's going on with you? Drunk asshole on the freeway this morning, Riley offered, examining a small patch of road rash on his arm. And what were you, of all people, doing on the freeway at 6:30? Couldn't sleep. Riley didn't feel like explaining the phone call that had woke him up at 5 a.m. Yeah, by the way, your drunk got sober enough to file a complaint. He says you hit him. Riley rocked the chair onto his back legs and looked at Harmon. I pulled him out of his truck and he attacked me. I defended myself and restrained him. Speaking of restraint, you almost cut his hands off with your cuffs. Am I really being called on this? This is bullshit. Riley dropped the chair back onto all four legs. This guy was drunk off his ass. He ran me off the road, trashed my bike, and hit another car. Bring him up here now, and I'll restrain him again. Don't worry, it won't stick. All the same, you might want to leave that last part of the report you're going to have on my desk before you leave on assignment tomorrow. Leave? Harmon clicked his mouse violently a few times and then pushed it aside, turning his full attention to Riley. I got an interesting phone call this morning. Calvin Dimes was number 2 on Riley's speed dial. Number 1 was a pizza place in Mercer Island that knew Riley well enough to order the usual. Dimes had been Riley's partner in homicide for almost 9 years. They could clear a house without speaking a word, and they knew each other enough for Dimes' wife to joke that they shared a brain. Dimes answered on the second ring. What do you need help with now? Riley ignored him. I have something to tell you, but I don't want you to panic, okay? What's that? You finally getting the operation and want to marry me? You know I am spoken for. Riley laughed. No, but I'm going out of town, so you're on your own for a few weeks. Stay calm, but without me here, you might have to do some actual police work. I'm up for it. You've been holding me back anyway. So, where are you going? And does she have a sister? I thought you were spoken for. Yeah, well. So, seriously, where are you headed? I got a call from an out-of-state department. They want some help with an open case. Riley was quiet. Dimes was quiet, so Riley continued. It's a serial murderer, so I'm just going to help sort through the evidence, give them some tips, point them in the right direction. I figure I'll be gone 1, maybe 2 weeks. Out of state? Dimes repeated. Yeah, like not in Washington. So where? Riley sighed. He had always avoided talking about Barbados. Riley was born and lived on the island until he was 18, but if someone asked him where he was from, the answer was always Texas, which wasn't entirely untrue. Riley had gotten his bachelor's degree in psychology from the University of Texas at Austin. If the conversation trapped him into admitting his heritage, the best he had ever been able to manage was, it's a nice place to visit, but you wouldn't want to have to stay there for more than a week. He had also told Dimes specifically that he would never go back. He had no attachment to the island, so why would he bother? While Riley was silently sorting through his thoughts, Dimes figured it out. Unfucking believable. So how did they talk you into it? They didn't. Riley sighed. They called me this morning. I told an annoying little prick named Weeks to fuck off. By the time I got in, they had called the chief of police and made an official request. Sergeant Hammond informed me that I had been assigned to the job. Those tricky bastards. Yeah, but it doesn't matter. I was seriously thinking of going anyway. I mean, if any other country in the world had called and asked for help, I would have said yes. Riley parroted the words another close friend had said to him 15 minutes before his run-in with the drunk driver, and right before she had closed her front door on him. That's bullshit, Riley, and you know it. You told me you would never go back, and you proved it. Christ, all you could manage for your own mother's funeral was some flowers. Riley wasn't sure how to respond. He was going back because the decision had been made for him, but nothing was ever that simple. You be careful down there. You don't have anything to prove to them, and we need you up here a whole lot more. Riley nodded, then said, I'm nodding. Dimes chuckled on the other end of the phone. They talked for a few minutes more. Riley avoided discussing the trip as best he could, and when Dimes offered to take him to the airport, he declined. I'll take a cab. I'm good. Well, you'd better get packing before you change your mind. And tell your sister I said hi. Riley fell backward on his bed and closed his eyes. His shoulder and back were aching from the fall, and a small patch of road rash on his forearm was burning. He was sure he hadn't had a worse day in years. Lying in the bed, he replayed in his head the phone call that had jarred him from sleep over 5 hours ago. Initially, the pause and the beep that signal an international call had panicked him. His number was unlisted, and the only person internationally that had it was his sister, Nicole. This caller was a male, however. Hello? Hello? Anybody there? Riley's first instinct was that something had happened to Nicole. I'm here. What's going on? Hello? May I speak with John, please? The man's voice was uncertain and abrupt. You got him. What's going on? John? That's you? I would never have recognized you. You sound so American. He pronounced it American. Who is this? Riley's concern was gone. Whoever this person was, we were too cheerful for the call to be bad news about his sister. It's Troy, John. Troy Weeks. We went to school together at Prez. I ain't seen you since the last day of school, I don't think. That must be what, 20 years? Riley ran a hand over the top of his shaved head as he tried to remember this person from his high school. He could almost place Troy Weeks, a short, scrawny kid who never shut up. Riley had skipped graduation at the Catholic run presentations secondary, seeing no point in the ceremony. It had never even occurred to him to say goodbye to his schoolmates. He hadn't so much as thought about them or his old school in almost 20 years. In his silence, Troy had launched into a catalogue of their classmates and where they were now. Riley interrupted him. I remember you, Troy. How did you get my number? Right. Well, we knew you were a cop in Seattle, John. We like to keep track of our local boys, you know. He laughed, a short, nervous burst. Anyway, I called the department, and they said you weren't out on duty yet. So I asked the lady for your phone number. I had to explain who I was and what I wanted. And after a good 10 minutes of this, 10 minutes, she said she couldn't do it. Said personal phone numbers cannot be given out. You believe that? She could have told me from the start. So anyway, I had to go find Nicole and get your number from her. I hope you don't mind. She said you didn't want your number going out, but I explained to her that this is a business call, John. And she said you would still be vexed, but Riley interrupted the man's rambling. In 50 words or less, Troy, tell me why you called me at 5 in the morning. Business, John. I'm an officer with the police force down here, and we need your help. No. Riley didn't even let the man explain. Just listen to me, John. We need your help finding someone. He's killed 6 girls that we know about. No. Weeks kept going. He leaves the bodies in Canefield, John, naked. Sometimes he beats them. And no. Just listen, all right? This isn't random, man. He's killed 6 girls. Troy was growing impatient and irritated at the constant interruptions. This is a serial killer in Barbados. We are a tropical paradise, man. We don't get serial killers, John. We need help. You've done this before. It's a tiny island, Troy. I'm sure your cops can figure this out. My answer is no. Or better yet, call the FBI. Your government is friends of ours. I'm sure they could love to help. But get off on that kind of shit. You can't do that, John. It's all politics, Asking another country for help is like saying we can't clean up our own messes. And our country doesn't want to owe the U.S. government any favors. Besides, if we ask for help officially, this will be all over the news up there. That's not good for tourism, John. But you're a local boy. We'd like to see our local boy solve this one. We'd like to see our local boy solve this one. But not a local boy. Just think about it, John. We need the help. And we will pay you as a consultant. Look, we're not stupid, but we don't know this. Some crazy guy is running around killing young women in cane fields. We just don't know this. We're doing our best, but we're chasing our tails, Plenty more girls could die before we find him. Hell, we might never find him. Riley offered one more. No. And then hung up the phone just as Troy had started to say something that sounded like, I'm sending... Now his phone was ringing again. Riley surfaced from his thoughts and reached his hand out. The handset was gone, probably forgotten in the kitchen. He closed his eyes and waited for the machine to pick up. After the beep, a voice came on. Riley, it's Dale. Just calling to remind you about tomorrow night. We're supposed to meet at the range at 7:30. See you there. Dale Monroe, a career traffic cop and Riley's shooting partner. They had been competing as a team for 2 years and practiced every weekend before a tournament. The next tourney was in a month. He had to call Dale back and break the bad news to him. Later. Okay, that's the end of chapter 1 of The Canefield Killer. That's one heck of a reminder, because I have not actually read this book since, I believe, about 2018, when I was putting on Wattpad and making sure that everything was going. It's quite a lot different. I mean, especially since this was written back in 2006, and I'm at a different place now. But it's still quite remarkable to take this trip back in time. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me for first chapters. This was chapter 1 of the Canefield Killer. It's available on Wattpad. All links and descriptions and everything are written. Jeez, I can't believe I flubbed that. Let me try again. All the links are all the links and social media information is in the description below. So go ahead and check the books out. It's in the Wattpad Paid program. And you can buy some coins in Wattpad to actually read the rest of the book. It's not out in paperback, but you can definitely go and read it on Wattpad and enjoy it. Anyway, thank you for joining me, and good night.